Reverend Carol Faye Daniels was born on October 26, 1947, in Oklahoma City. She graduated from Douglas High School in 1965 and earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in chemistry and biology from Central State University in 1971. While there, she joined the Zeta Phi Beta sorority. The same year she graduated, she married Alvin L. Daniels. They spent a few years in Spokane, Washington, before returning to Oklahoma in 1978. In 1990, Carol was ordained by Christ Holy Sanctified Churches, and later on served as a pastor for the Worthy Temple Christ Holy Sanctified Church in Anadarko. Friends and family described her as a gentle, devoted, and steadfast individual who was very devoted to her religion. Each Sunday, she made the 60-mile drive to the small church for services. Sadly, most Sundays, no one attended, but she was always there with open arms. When she did have attendees, they were usually residents from the local nursing home. Unfortunately, during one of those empty services, a horrible tragedy occurred. On August 23, 2009, surveillance footage showed her arriving at the church as usual that morning around 10 a.m. It was another Sunday with no visitors, so at 11:40, a retired bishop and his wife noticed her car parked in the front of the church for a couple of hours with no one else there and became concerned. The bishop tapped on the door with his cane and yelled out for Carol, but received no response. Concerned about what they would find, the police department, located just a block away, was notified. Officer Ashley Burris arrived at the church, entered through an open side door, and made a horrifying discovery. Inside, he found Carol dead from multiple stab wounds. The details from here get even more shocking. Her clothes were missing, her hair was burned, and the killer posed her body in a crucifix position at the church's pulpit. Due to the defensive wounds on her hands, investigators believe she tried to fight off her attacker. As for being sexually assaulted, no signs were found. Carol's purse and briefcase were missing from the scene. The killer also took her clothes and sprayed some kind of solution on and around her body, likely to destroy any DNA evidence they left behind. The nearby step-and-fetch cameras didn't cover the back door or alleyway. Investigators did, however, have the back door removed and placed it into evidence. Unfortunately, what video surveillance they did have was of such low quality that an identification couldn't be made. The Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, or just OSBI, was brought in to assist. They spent months gathering evidence and information related to the case. Several motives had been considered before they settled on the theory that the killer had broken into the church in order to steal money, but when they encountered Carol, it led to an attack and then her ultimate death. Unfortunately, Anadarko was riddled with drugs then, and it's even worse now. In 2015, a woman came forward saying she had seen a suspect with a blood-stained blouse and a knife around the time of the murder and directed investigators to a shed where she believed items had been burned. Nothing was recovered, and the tipster died days later. Eventually, they settled on a main suspect, 55-year-old Denise K. Cooper, who went by Darnell. In 2017, at the request of the district attorney, a grand jury was set to hear the case, but Cooper died of cancer before it could be completed. Cooper had allegedly confessed to the crime to a friend at a casino as she was dying of cancer. She had spent time in prison for the distribution of meth, and she had a criminal history that included assault. She was also a known drug dealer, and a witness had seen her on the day of the murder going into a shed with a bloody knife and a black blouse. She was then allegedly seen burning the items. Interestingly, Michael Dean Walworth, another pastor whose church, First Missionary Baptist, was only 20 minutes from Carol's, was burned to death in June 2017 outside his church. In 2010, Carol's church was demolished, and now a memorial stands at the site. A $10,000 reward is being offered for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the perpetrator. If you know anything about the murder of Reverend Carol Daniels, please call the OSBI tip line at 1-800-522-8017. Her life was brutally taken on August 23, 2009, and as of October 2025, no arrests have been made, and the case remains unsolved. Edgar Joe Eddington, who went by Eddie, was born on March 9, 1945, in Alameda County, California. At the age of 51, he lived in a mobile home located in North Tulsa County. Family and friends described him as a great guy who was always willing to help others. He was especially known for raising championship dogs that competed in national shows across the country. He also created custom harnesses. After his first marriage to Wanda ended in the 70s, he met and married a woman named Vicky. However, he and Wanda remained close as they had 3 children together. Unfortunately, in early 1997, a horrible tragedy occurred. On February 5, 1997, Eddie's wife, Vicky, came home, pulled into the driveway, and saw that a window had been broken out of their mobile home. As she entered the home, she made a horrifying discovery. Eddie was lying near the front door, bloody and deceased. He had been viciously beaten and stabbed to death. Investigators theorized that due to the multiple shoe prints in the home, 2 or more people were likely involved in his death. They also discovered that Eddie's wallet was missing, and one of his younger dogs was unaccounted for. Investigators concluded that Eddie tried escaping through a broken window, but was captured outside and forced back in, where he was killed in a brutal assault. If you have any information about the murder of Eddie Eddington, please call Tulsa Crime Stoppers at 918-596-2677. Eddie was murdered in February 1997, and as of October 2025, this case remains unsolved. Judy Ellen Weichert was born in Ponca City, Oklahoma, on September 15, 1950, to Joseph and Margaret Lechtenberg. In 1969, she graduated from Ponca City High School and then married Steve Weichert on her 33rd birthday. Together, they lived in Oklahoma City, where she was employed at Esom Oil. Friends and family described Judy as a kind and athletic individual who devoted her spare time to running. One of her main routes was along North Sara Road, near the Sundance Airport in northwest Oklahoma City. Sadly, while out on one of those jogs, a horrible tragedy occurred. On July 28, 1984, Judy left for a morning run at around 7:30 a.m. That day, as she was training for an upcoming marathon, she planned to run 16 miles. However, her run was interrupted as she was nearing Sara Road, north of Northwest 122nd. It was there that she was violently attacked. She was sexually assaulted and stabbed repeatedly before the attacker fled, leaving her gravely wounded. However, she was determined to survive and crawled roughly 50 feet, slipping under a barbed wire fence before finally reaching the edge of the road. Around 9:45 a.m., someone finally caught a glimpse of her lying in the tall grass and stopped to help. After finding a phone to call 911, she was rushed to Mercy Hospital and underwent emergency surgery. But despite her strength and the doctor's efforts, she passed away at about 1 p.m. from blood loss. Before she passed, Judy provided a brief description of her attacker. She said he was a white male in his late 20s to early 30s, about 5'10" to 6 feet tall, slender but muscular with a large nose, long wavy dirty blonde hair, a scruffy beard, a strong jaw, a ruddy complexion, and a circular tattoo on his upper left shoulder. She said he drove a Volkswagen Beetle, and a witness also reported seeing an older, faded blue Volkswagen Beetle in the area at the time. Oklahoma City Police formed a task force, received hundreds of tips, interviewing over 1,000 people, and tracking about 400 Blue Beetle owners that first year. Detectives also explored similarities to attacks on female runners in Sonoma, Las Vegas, and Fairfax County, Virginia, but the leads ultimately led nowhere. Judy's widow, Steve, eventually rebuilt his life while carrying the weight of his loss. He eventually became a well-known musician in Oklahoma and Texas before dying of cancer in 2013. At this time, it's unclear if any DNA still remains from the sexual assault, but Judy's family is hoping that if it does, it can be used for genetic genealogy. If you have any information about the murder of Judy Weichert, call the Oklahoma City Police Department at 405-297-1127. Even the smallest detail could help. Judy Ellen Weichert was murdered on July 28, 1984, and as of October 2025, this case remains unsolved. Sara Hope Fuller was born on October 7, 1984, in Kansas. When she was 2 and her sister Nicole was 3, they were living with their 28-year-old mother, Stephanie Fuller, in Wichita, Kansas. Nicole's father, Kara's stepfather, was 27-year-old Charles Morris. He and Stephanie had separated, but he was still allowed visitation. On July 29, 1986, Charles stopped by the house to play with Sara and Nicole. While they played, Stephanie remained in the living room watching TV. As Charles was leaving, he told her that Nicole was down for a nap. A couple of hours later, Charles walked into the police station and confessed to a crime that no one even knew took place. He had suffocated his daughter, Nicole, to death before leaving the house earlier that day. Meanwhile, Stephanie was about to make a horrifying discovery. As she went to check on the girls just before 6 p.m., she found Nicole unresponsive with a housecoat over her face. She quickly called 911, and an ambulance rushed Nicole to the hospital, but she was sadly pronounced dead. Thankfully, Sara was physically unharmed. Charles was arrested and charged with Nicole's murder. He then pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. A Wichita psychologist testified for the defense that Charles had suffered a brief depersonalization when he suffocated his daughter and had lacked any control over his own behavior. In Kansas, a person can be found not guilty by reason of insanity only if he did not understand the nature and quality of his act, or if he didn't know what he was doing was wrong. In the end, a jury disagreed and found him guilty of second-degree murder. In 1988, the Kansas Supreme Court affirmed the conviction. Sadly, the story doesn't end there. 10 years later, 13-year-old Sara was removed from the home due to the sexual abuse at the hands of a different stepfather. After that, Sara spent the next 5 years bouncing around foster homes until she aged out of the system. She then moved from Kansas to Oklahoma City and began working the streets to survive. She only survived for 6 months before being murdered. On June 8, 2004, a fisherman found her body floating in Lake Stanley, Draper. She had been stabbed multiple times and was left floating in shallow waters about 20 feet from the shore. It took almost a month to confirm the identification. Instead of the news focusing on her murder, they focused on her substance abuse and prostitution. Not much was even known about her until January 2005, when her mother gave an interview and provided details of Sara's life. Her mother, Stephanie, also said, and I quote, "I quit taking calls from my daughter because it would hurt me, because she wouldn't come home. It didn't matter how many bus tickets I arranged for her. She would never show up, and I just couldn't handle the pain anymore." Stephanie sadly passed away in 2008 at the age of 52. If you have any information regarding the murder of Sara Hope Fuller, please contact the Oklahoma City Police Department at 405-297-1000. Sara was found murdered on June 8, 2004, and as of October 2025, this case remains unsolved. Wes William Langley was born on November 14, 1984, in rural Veneta, Oklahoma, to Brian and Susie. In 2003, he graduated from Miami High School and then played football at Bacone College. He then married Macy McWaters in 2009. At 35, he and Mary lived near Brangus Road and Limestone Drive in Shawnee, Oklahoma. He had worked in the gaming industry for the last 15 years and participated in wrestling, powerlifting, hunting, and golfing. He was also a Sooner, supporting the University of Oklahoma's football team every game. Wes was described as having a generous nature, a sociable personality, and a very distinctive laugh. On August 21, 2020, someone requested a welfare check of Wes at his home. When authorities arrived, they found him dead in the garage with signs of severe trauma to his head. Apparently, his killer used a kettlebell. Several people close to Wes said he used his garage as a place to work out, prepare for hunting, and spend time alone. After Wes was found murdered, police began investigating his relationships, and they found there had been previous arguments between Wes and a neighbor. That neighbor's house was later searched, though it's unclear if any evidence was recovered. Detectives also responded to a burglary call just hours before Wes was found. A house on the same street had been burglarized, but it's unclear if it's related to Wes's murder. A main suspect in the case is 34-year-old Matthew Causey. He had accused Wes of having an affair with his wife and had allegedly watched Wes's house for weeks before his murder. In July 2021, Causey was arrested for the homicide, but then released 6 months later due to insufficient evidence. If you or anyone you know has information regarding the homicide of Wes Langley, please call the Pottawatomie County Sheriff's Office at 405-273-1727. Wes William Langley was found murdered on August 21, 2020, and as of October 2025, this case remains unsolved.